In this lesson, we'll discuss the risk of abnormal scapulothoracic function. You've learned that total shoulder movement equals the movement of the shoulder joint and the movement of the shoulder blade. And in something like this, there's about 105 degrees of the shoulder joint moving and 75 of the shoulder blade moving. This is what happens when we don't allow that, when we try to keep the shoulder blade still while we move the arm bone. This is actually not possible to do because bones would get in the way. This is rather what naturally would happen if we did not try to keep the shoulder blade still as we take the arms overhead. In an inversion like this, with about 170 degrees of flexion, we have about 70 degrees of scapulothoracic lateral rotation to allow this. This is what that would look like if it was done naturally. And you can see that though this is right side up and she is upside down, the bony structure is stacked, rather than here where the shoulder blade has not been allowed to rotate. The head of the humerus is next to that very shallow shoulder socket. So while in something like downward facing dog, it can be problematic, it gets extremely problematic in something like an inversion or a big back bend, or worse yet, falling out of one of those with this kind of shoulder positioning can and has led to many serious yoga injuries. This is not the way to position the shoulders, rather this is. So you can see here when you allow scapulohumeral rhythm to happen, which you must understand if you're going to teach people how to do things with their body safely like this, we stack the bones. We stack the shoulder blades on top of the arm bone, which again is the natural movement of the body. So when you compare them, you can see that on the left there's not stacking and on the right there is. So unfortunately, there are many instructions given in asana classes these days, like pull your shoulders away from your ears when the arms are overhead like this. Drop into the shoulder sockets when the arms are like this. Plug your arms into the sockets. Square off the shoulders, maybe even no instruction, just float up. These things aren't good. They lead to the arrangement of the bones that you see here pictured, which is the arm bone next to the shoulder socket, which is not stable. There's no ligament that will hold it stable, and the rotator cuff muscles cannot hold the shoulder joint in this position. So some things that will happen is that this will render the rotator cuff muscles less effective and prone to injury because they're being pulled into a weaker state by much larger muscles. This is unstable, and if it's fallen from, it can very easily completely dislocate a shoulder. It happens in asana classes. Ambulances come. Because it doesn't stack the bony structure. And it can lead to immobile scapula because of the work of holding the scapula in place. And that can lead to really big problems for your students. Like this. Don't be that teacher. So when the arms are overhead, please do not pull your shoulders away from your ears when shoulder flexion. When at or near 180 degrees of flexion or abduction, reach from the inferior angles of the scapula through the lateral borders of the hands, while drawing the medial trapezius away inferiorly. Now, to understand that without the anatomical language, just look at the arrows in the picture. This is the direction of effort when you're in any asana where the arms are overhead like this. The outer shoulder blades pull toward the top of the head, toward the hands. Many people will think, well, I don't want to do that because that'll bring my shoulders up around my ears. Well, it will not, because look at the other arrows. Pull the inner border of your shoulder blade away from your head. That is lateral rotation, and it will set you free. Reach from the inferior angles of the scapula through the lateral borders to the hands, while drawing the medial trapezius away inferiorly. In fact, instead of pulling your shoulders away from your ears, reach your outer shoulders toward your ears and pull the inner shoulder blades away from them. When you're moving into these positions, an easy way to make sure it happens is to keep the elbows straight when moving through the flexion or abduction that gets you there. And then stop before the elbows bend.